Welcome back to the Juice Box, episode 2, the official Political Juice podcast. I'm gonna stick with that for my opener for now until I find a better way to open this podcast. But welcome back. If you're watching on YouTube and you haven't heard the news, this podcast is now available on iTunes and Spotify. And if you're listening on iTunes, please, we need all the 5-star reviews, because that's what you do when you have a podcast. Just keep begging for 5 stars. Anything less, then just forget I said anything. But also, if you're listening, these podcasts will always be uploaded to YouTube as well. But at times, or if you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, when the podcast is up on YouTube, I will put up various pictures and videos on screen, so people will have some sort of reference for the things I might be talking about, or I might put up some questions you guys send so you can see it for yourselves, or articles and photos. So you can make that trade-off yourself. But for most people who want to listen to this podcast on the go and don't want to pay for YouTube Red, which I am with you. I will never pay for YouTube Red. I can understand why you don't want to just watch it if you're on the go somewhere. So I hope you enjoy it on iTunes and Spotify. We're going to need some well-paying sponsors before I even consider spending even more money to get this on SoundCloud, because apparently you can't just send an RSS feed over there. You need to also host the podcast from that platform or something like that. So it's stuff that I don't want to think about. To get it on SoundCloud is not as easy as it might seem, and I've already got a monthly payment thing going on to run this podcast, so we're gonna need some sponsors before this starts to really grow. But for now, hopefully you can access this through either iTunes or Spotify. If you do listen to this podcast through iTunes or Spotify, there is a bonus podcast that went up maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago that I did on the Game of Thrones finale. I didn't want to put that up on YouTube because I didn't want to have 3 podcasts cluttering the channel page, and by the time that this one went up, it was all Game of Thrones, so I didn't feel like putting that up on YouTube wasn't that important. But if you have either of the 2 apps, you can listen to it. It's rambly, like always, but hopefully you enjoyed it. And I also started a blog. I mentioned that in the comments of the last podcast video, too, if anyone is interested in reading about politics and stuff from me. I guess I'll leave the links to these various things in the description of the video. So that's all the important stuff. If I sound a little congested, that's because it's allergy season, and I think Eugene, Oregon is like the only city in the red zone right now in the entire country for pollen levels. So I'm just dying every time I step outside. I have really bad allergies. But anyway, today's podcast, it's going to have to be a bit of a quick one for me. Unfortunately, as my final term of sophomore year of college is coming to a close, that means I have a lot of stuff I need to work on for my classes, and stuff I need to do for the videos. So while I'm doing this podcast, I'm also going to be working on my Japanese homework. I know I'm really pushing the limits of my podcasting skills here. It's only episode 2, but it's the easiest type of homework I get, so I figured I can do some of it while I talk here. But because I'm doing Japanese homework, we're gonna play some Animal Crossing music in the background for this podcast, because why not? Ne. じゃあ、始めましょう! Oh, and there's only 2 ways you can talk in Japanese, by the way. There's angry man who just goes, Oi! Nani kore? Baka! And there's Japanese schoolgirl. ごめんなさい! 失礼! Oh, by the way, if you didn't get to that part of the college video where I talked about anime, I absolutely do not like anime. I don't like the art style. I don't like the childlike voice acting and hyper emotional nature of it all. Not my thing. I have never like I never even liked Pokemon or what. There was always that one kid who would show off his Yu-Gi-Oh cards at the lunch table, or that person who just talks nonstop about Dragon Ball and Naruto. Like I never cared about any of that. The only anime that I can say that I have watched with some amount of enjoyment, though it did have a lot of the traits that I don't like, was the first season of Attack on Titan. I've only seen the one. I've only seen the one season. I probably won't watch the second, and I don't have much interest in reading the manga of it. But so that's like the one exception to my disdain for anime. The only other exceptions are like childhood things, so Doraemon and Gegege no Kitaro, because I read some of those as a kid, and we always had a few of those books lying around in the house when I was growing up, so I have a bit of a connection to those. And I really like my favorite holiday is Halloween, and so I really like the drawings of all the ghosts and demons in the Kitaro manga or anime or whatever. I don't know if there's an anime of it. I really like that eyeball character. Just the idea of a talking eyeball is really... There's a lot of great character designs in that series. But okay, that's enough. That's enough anime. No one came here for that crap. So I said I would talk about some of the comments you guys left on the previous podcast video, and one of them wanted me to elaborate more on why I don't like the Civil War talk. And in particular, I got this comment from someone. I used to agree with the part about always taking the higher road than the left, but there's a giant problem with that. It's not a winning tactic. The left is winning because they don't care about civil discourse. They will scream and shout until they get their way, and it's working. It's clearly not an effective strategy to calmly discuss policy or cause an effect with leftists, because they simply do not care. The right is fighting for America's culture while the left is actively working on dismantling it, and they're winning. Normally, I agree with being civil and letting your superior ideas prevail, but this has become an extreme situation. We're so deep into clown world now that the right must take extreme action to swing the pendulum. The right must take extreme action to swing the pendulum back in our favor. This is where all of the Civil War talk is coming from, because we're fucking tired of losing, man. So this is the, Jonah Goldberg writes about this a lot, but this is the moral equivalent of war talking right here, where every fight becomes equivalent to a real war. William James wrote a book on this whole idea, and basically, when you reduce everything down to a moral equivalent to war, the idea is that you get people to unite around something greater than themselves, and they drop all your private individual interests and pursuits and serve the interest of whatever it is that the state wants. And in this particular case with the right now, I guess it's just serving the interests of Trump and his overall agenda, making America great again. But primarily the means of getting that agenda through. I'll get to that in a second. But if I can remember the quote from William James right, I believe he said something specifically about how he wants the mentality of people to be as though we should be owned like soldiers are by the army. But it's all of that. It's that attitude without the bloodshed of actual war. And that was William James's whole idea. Get people in a warlike state without the war itself, so they can come around a common cause and whatever that is, and get some political action done. It's mostly if you even hold the slightest classically liberal beliefs or modern day conservative principles, I don't see how you can't see this. I don't see how you can't see this as being inherently anti-liberal. liberal in the traditional sense. This is just like a power play almost, because the idea here is that it's a psychological trick. You know, it's not wrong, William James. People do tend to unite around a common cause when in warlike situations. But what about when you're literally not in a civil war? We are not in a civil war right now. What good do you think it is doing to be using civil war rhetoric? Like, think about what you're justifying now. Okay. Okay, this is a civil war, so we can start killing people, right? Oh, no, that's not what I mean by civil war. Don't take it literally, dude. Then why are we using civil war rhetoric? And this is the point where I get all uppity, because this is asking you to stop thinking. It's asking you to stop using your brain power. It's saying that it's saying this is literally war. Except it's not, but don't question it, or else you just want to lose. You don't want to win. And so now we're merging with full on Trumpian rhetoric, where it's all about winning. And if you're not going to use our tactics, which we claim as winning, then you're all about losing, and you just want to lose, and you're no longer fighting for what you believe. Apparently, this is illiberal stuff. The whole point of liberalism and the way our Constitution is set up is that it only works when people use facts and reason and being honest. And I mean, for one, we've already killed the honesty part, because we're not being honest up front that we are not in a civil war. This is not a civil war. Stop using civil war rhetoric. But when you're just reducing everything down to a contest of winning or who can own the most, then you can just do anything you want in order to justify winning. You can say to hell with the rules, to hell with your liberal values in your Constitution. I just want to win. So I'm going to do all the bad stuff my opponent does, because that's what's most important, winning. Not sticking to my ideals, not being honest, not having set standards for myself, just winning. And, so often this winning has absolutely nothing to do with what people actually believe, but is, or at least for the right, it's just over not letting the left get their way, even if it's over the same exact policy position that they were holding. I mean, there was a poll by like the Huffington Post, I think, back in 2015, where when told that Obama supported universal health care, like only 20% of Republicans supported it. But when they were told that Trump supported universal health care, somewhere near like 50% supported it. I honestly couldn't tell you what percentage of Republicans actually believe what they do, or self-proclaimed conservatives for that matter. I can't tell you how many of them actually believe the things that they say anymore. And again, this is this is because we stopped thinking, and we've entered tribal thinking. The tribal mentality, this is not liberal in any sense. This is not the attitude that created liberal democratic capitalism in this country. You're shutting off any sort of feedback here. You're shutting out argument. Seriously. Our whole civilization is based on the idea that you can reason and argue your way to a persuasive position. If you think that the other side isn't doing that, what exactly says they're succumbing to what you call screaming and shouting until they get their way? What exactly says that you're going to win over any converts with that attitude? You're not winning me over. You're not winning over the millions of people who despise Trump for all he is right now. You're not winning over any liberals. You're not making an argument here. That's it. And there are people who are very bad at promoting this kind of rhetoric, and you're exploiting our system for all the freedom it's given you. And just because you don't like how the left exploits that system, I'm not going to see that as a justification for the entirety of the right to start exploiting that as well. This is what I don't get about self-proclaimed conservatives these days, and you see a lot of this on Twitter, where they usually say something along the lines of, you're not a real conservative, or what exactly is it that you're trying to conserve? Or, my favorite, you just want to lose. This is a zero-sum view of politics. You're corrupting all of the things I mentioned in the pursuit of the means you are using to get you to where you purportedly want to be is corrupting everything you claim to hold dear. And I'm not going to prevaricate around this issue in defense of what I believe, or in defense of Trump, or the Civil War mindset. We are not in a civil war. Please stop using Civil War rhetoric. This is not helpful for anyone. And I mean, I generally tend to agree that the left, or leftist ideas in the culture are very damaging, but you need to utilize persuasion. And please don't tell me that I'm supposed to excuse everything damaging about Trump's cult of personality and the culture of his rhetoric, or just drop everything I believe because the left is so bad, or because the left does it too. I mean, just the fact that voters, so many voters turned to Trump, right? Supposedly people with principled morals went for a guy like Trump. And I'm not talking about the people who bit the bullet and voted for him. The people who acknowledge that he's just a load of crap, but they weren't going to lie for him, but they still voted for him. I'm not talking about that person. I'm talking about the person who voted for him and said to hell with all their beliefs, and are, still making excuses, and are like, there is a reason why I'm not a registered Republican. Like, I don't know what the hell is going on with this party. Like, one of my favorite polls out there this is probably a few years ago, I think was that, like in 2011, something like 29% of evangelical Protestants said that an elected official who commits an immoral act in their personal life can still behave ethically in their public life. And that was 2011, something like 29% of evangelicals. That number went up to like 70% in 2016. I mean, the people who are most tolerant of moral impropriety are evangelical Protestants. That's more than all Americans. That's on average. Just for Trump. Like, just for a guy, like, the man is only influenced by his feelings, or wherever he finds meaning. The man has no principles. The guy cheats on his first wife with his second wife, and then cheated on his second wife with Melania, and then he cheated on Melania with Stormy Daniels, but hooray, we're winning or something. And that's the thing that, and this is my problem with labels, right? Because I love to just be fine with calling myself this one thing or a modern conservative or a classical liberal, but these words don't really mean a whole lot anymore when there are self-proclaimed conservatives or classical liberals, people who call themselves these things, who are throwing their supposed principles aside just so they can hope that Trump succeeds in achieving certain policy outcomes, or just so he can win some more. The feeling of winning. I mean, like, do these words even mean anything now? Do words matter? Do the ideas you espouse matter when you are corrupting the things you supposedly care about? Like if you're one of the people I'm talking about, how exactly do you get back to some sort of traditional conservative culture in this country when you're sick and tired of seeing the left dominate, all aspects of the culture? How do you expect to get back to some sort of decent society when you're out there promoting a guy who literally doesn't care about any of that? He will bully people, he will call people petty names, say the dumbest things on Twitter, and we're just supposed to support that in the hopes that, we're supposed to win the culture back somehow. Like, that's the idea here. Does the culture miraculously become more decent and honest by promoting a man who lies on a near daily basis? And how does that work exactly? We're going to get back to a real a real principled conservative society, and to do that, we're going to throw away everything we hold dear. Forget how constitutional processes. Forget all that. That's losing, okay? And you're not going to see me wearing a "Make America Great Again" hat. You're not. And I don't care how many justices he's able to get on the Supreme Court. I don't care how bad the left gets or how many regulations Trump's able to get rid of or whatever. I'm not going to participate in this kind of crap. And, again, it's very difficult for me to have political conversations with people, especially people my age or self-proclaimed conservatives who are kind of just going along with the fan service of it all. Because, of course, if the only thing that matters is gut feeling or tribal instinct, if we're done with thinking about these things, then yeah, principle is not something you're interested in. It's like, this is how children think. Adults are supposed to think and use reason. There was something like, I really liked Jonah Goldberg's latest book came out last year, and he says, he quotes something from Hitler where during Hitler's rise to power he says something like, "We need to destroy reason. Reason has poisoned the minds of our people." And the Republican Party they have invited this kind of populism into the party for a while now. And they have a major faction of populists in the party people who, there was another poll where something like 52% of Republicans would be fine with postponing the 2020 election if Trump wanted to do that. Does anyone actually believe in the Constitution anymore? Or do they only believe in it when it allows Trump to get his way? This is the kind of thinking that just corrupts the culture, our whole political system. And the Republican Party is now, there is a major constituency that finds this rhetoric favorable to their ears. And I don't know what's going to happen. People keep saying that 2020 is going to be an easy win for Trump. I mean, really? I don't know about that. But, lately this whole issue has been wrapped up with the David French and Sohrab Ahmari debate. And, I do not fall on the side of Ahmari on this because, for one, he doesn't... I'm assuming the situation, but, for one, he doesn't make any sort of... He's making the same case that this comment brings up, where he says that he wants to fight the culture war with the aim of defeating the enemy and enjoying the spoils in the form of a public square reordered to the common good and ultimately the highest good. You notice all, okay, for one, you notice all the war language here, defeating the enemy, enjoying the spoils. But in his case here, doing that, I guess in any sort of decent or persuasive way, is to lose. And so, what's the solution here? If David French's style of persuasion is bad, what's the preferred alternative? Are we just to start screaming in people's faces? I thought that's what we all criticized about the crazies from the Kavanaugh debacle. What is the proper way to go about this? Should we tweet at Chuck Schumer that he's a cuck or something? Should we just be more angry on social media or use more inflammatory rhetoric? If you think people aren't being convinced by decent persuasion, is calling them names going to convince them? Psychologically, the person that you demean is going to be more committed to their beliefs after being ridiculed. Like we have data on this. If you're in a political debate with someone and you just say, you don't see my way because you're a stupid moron idiot. the person's not going to say to themselves, oh wow, he called me a stupid moron idiot. I really think he's got a good argument there. Yeah, I'm going to believe him. No one, that doesn't, and hey, I hope I have at least a handful of liberals listening to me rambling right now, because, I want to try and convince everyone of what I believe, either through the videos or from, whatever value they can get out of this terrible podcast, because human beings are capable of being reasoned to. Honestly, I feel that a lot of this has been justified by the most hardcore of Trump's base just because he won the election. Like, no one was saying during 2016, you didn't have that guy on MSNBC, like, or Fox say, like, yeah, guys, if we just call the libs a bunch of baby-killing demon spawns, we'll just win all the elections. That's it. We just need to call them evil people. Like, it was only after he won that you really start getting the idea that Trump's style is a winning tactic. It doesn't matter that he lost a popular vote or that he won certain, I forget which state he won in the Mideast or the Midwest, with fewer votes than what Romney got. Like, fewer people turned out, but I mean, so now all sorts of douchebaggery from him is excused. Did everyone just forget about the blue wave we had in Congress? Did the midterm election just not happen? Does the trend of suburban Republicans not turning out to vote for Republicans, does that just not mean anything? And there was another article too that I saw last week by, it was tweeted out by Grant Addison, from a guy from Human Events Magazine or .com, by William Chamberlain. And it's so bad that I can't tell if it's a parody or not. But he keeps saying in this piece stuff like, peacetime conservatives complain that their colleagues have abandoned their principles. Wartime conservatives refuse to adhere to self-defeating principles. Peacetime conservatives worry about setting precedents that Democrats could exploit in the future. Wartime conservatives recognize that Democrats do unprecedented things all the time. Peacetime conservatives renounce government power and rely on invisible hand mechanisms. Wartime conservatives don't hesitate to use government power to achieve conservative ends. Peacetime conservatives insist that facts don't care about your feelings. Wartime conservatives know that the scoreboard doesn't care about your facts. So set aside the moral equivalent of war stuff again. Wartime conservatives. This guy is of the mindset that in order to achieve conservative ends, we must effectively reject conservative principles on the most fundamental things like government power. Wartime conservatives don't hesitate to use government power to achieve conservative ends. Wartime conservatives know that the scoreboard doesn't care about your facts. This is so bad. I mean, we just want to win, so we need all the government power. I mean, that's his argument here. I mean, he goes on to start talking about seizing endowments from college campuses. And yeah, this is a good quote. The first rule of wartime conservatism, the principles that prevent you from winning are probably bad principles. This guy's whole standard here is winning. That's it. It doesn't matter what you believe, you just need to win. I don't even, how does this make sense? All of this is tribal. This is just tribal. It's so corrupting to traditional liberalism and the Constitution. Like, the stuff all of the people of this mindset claim to want to defend. Good luck getting everyone to go back to your conservative ideals once this grand victory comes, after you've told them to disregard all those principles because they're for weak losers. Yeah, okay, okay, guys, we're just gonna throw conservatism in the dumpster just once, alright? Just this one time. We hate all the things we claim to believe.
I'm only gonna do it once.
Jim, tell him it's a bad idea.
I'm only gonna do it once.
What kind of movement are you even building? This is a movement of expediency. and what primarily sounds like an expediency of being able to own the libs in a more timely fashion. So, for some questions, at what point does the Constitution get in the way of winning? Because we have, it's set up to not get a whole lot done. And when does that get in the way of bringing about the so-called true conservative worldview? At what point do actual standards and principles outweigh the tribal sense of winning? I mean, this just reeks of wanting nothing but power. So, at the end of the day, stop with the Civil War rhetoric. Stop exploiting and corrupting our Constitution for the purposes of winning. Stop looking at liberals as being, like, evil people. And start using persuasion. And you're going to think about that for a little bit while I return to my Japanese homework. Okay, so I think I've dispensed with that topic for now. I might return to it in a future video, but there was another type of comment I got in relation to the last... Oh my god, it's already been 30 minutes. There was another comment I got in relation to the last 20 minutes of the second of Crazier for Kavanaugh, where people either don't seem to understand what democracy means or just haven't been exposed enough to its usage outside of electoral systems. Like, usually when someone says that we live in a democracy, someone will just reply, I'll have you know that we're a constitutional representative republic, sir. Yeah, that's true. I know that. But when I'm talking about democracy, or when I'm talking about democratic institutions, or, the value of it, I'm talking about it in terms of the things that come out of that. So, tolerance, diversity of opinion, pluralism, compromise, civil society, basic institutions of free association, the freedom to take part in certain activities. Those are all democratic values. Those are all democratic ideals. I get the impression that for most people, the only understanding of democratic institutions they have don't go any deeper than, democracy equals the mob equals bad. Like, hey man, I don't like the mob either, and pure democracy sucks. We know it does. But there's a lot of other stuff to unpack here. It's a deeper term than you're giving it credit for. Liberal democratic capitalism is what our system promotes. Those values are a part of our foundation. They constrain certain types of decision making from political leaders, and those constraints are built into our Constitution so that we can have the ability to engage in democratic activities, free from government constraint. All of the stuff we do in our daily lives are part of a democratic society. When people say we live in a democratic society, don't take that to mean we vote like a democracy, or we have a democratic electoral system of just direct popular vote. The freedom to be able to choose to do the things we do is all a part of democracy. And I guess that's all I've got to say about that. Back to Japanese for a little bit. Ne. Hai. この大きいカバンはどうですか？そうですね。それもいいですけど、私はあそこにある。What? I've been taking Japanese for 2 years now, and I really hate it whenever we get introduced to a kanji that we might have learned months ago, but we just never see it again. And then I kind of forget how you're supposed to pronounce it. Anyways, well, we've already somehow gone on for 40 minutes, so, those were the two main concerns that I got from the comment section of the previous video, Civil War stuff, and I needed to mention that about democracy from the Kavanaugh video. Other concerns that people mentioned were some people seem to be getting vertigo watching the video because I have the American flag kind of waving around. And they're getting vertigo from looking at that. That was actually I use Final Cut Pro to edit the videos, and I drew that flag, for a video months ago, and I keep all the art assets that I draw so I can reuse them. But I just put a water ripple effect on the flag, and apparently it's making people barf. I'll think of something else to put on the screen in the future to maybe reduce the amount of vertigo you get. You might just need to take Dramamine for now. I know I get very motion sick in cars. Like I've always gotten motion sick. On long car trips that I've been on as a kid, I always had to just lay down because laying down for me helps. Though now I just always have to take Dramamine before I enter. Well, sometimes if I sit in the passenger seat, I don't get it motion sick at all. If I'm sitting in the back, sometimes it's a bit worse. But I always need to take, or from now on, I really just need to take Dramamine. And I can never look at my phone while I'm in a car, or else I'm just going to get immediately sick. But, so I understand some of the vertigo concerns. I just thought it was something, I wanted something that moves on the background. Like one time, and that came out of one time I was watching. I don't think it was an Emperor Lemon official, one of his proper videos. I think he was just talking, but it was just a static screen. But he had various things moving around, and I like that idea, especially if you're doing a podcast like format and you don't want it to just be a picture, so I like the idea of something moving on the screen, so I just put up a waving flag. I might put other things on the screen in the future if that helps reduce the vertigo. Otherwise, you might be better off listening to it as a podcast or properly instead of watching it. But anyways, we've gone on for a while now. I need to get wrapping, but we have a lot of Patreon questions this time around, much more than last time, because for some reason, there was only like 6 people, and I have 70 patrons, and only 6 people asked questions last time, so I don't know what's going on with that, but we got a couple more questions this time, and I'll try to get through them quickly. This one is from Obama Forever. What's your opinion on Rand Paul's penny plan? As a follow-up, how concerned are you about the national debt? Okay. Like, I try not to think about things that I know just will never happen. I haven't looked at his penny plan, but I'm assuming that I think that has something to do with reducing the national debt. But like I don't put that much thought on stuff that I know just won't ever happen. Congress right now is really not interested in limiting their spending, and as it pertains to the national debt, I'm so stingy in my life with regards to how I spend my money that to think that we are 21 trillion in debt now disturbs me. Let's just say that the idea of a Roth IRA is really appealing to me. If you don't, you can look up what a Roth IRA is, but I like the idea of that for my future. That's all I'll say about that. Next question. Do people around your college know you make videos? Have you ever seen anybody watching one? Aside from the college Republicans on my campus, who are the ones who found me, I have never seen anyone watching them. I get sometimes I might get a little paranoid because I think about the fact that over 400,000 people have watched my college video. I mean, that's like the population of my campus times 20. So like everyone on campus could have seen it. So sometimes I get worried that they might like recognize my voice when I say something in class, or but I haven't encountered anyone like, you know, randomly who just said, "Hey, I know you," like that. I mean, I don't dress in all white for one in real life, so you know it's a bit hard for people to know who I am. Though it does help that I have no friends on this campus, and I've never seen anyone watching one. I don't know what I would think if I did. Next question. Liked your list of movies from the last podcast, especially when you mentioned Come and See and Tarkovsky's work. What's your thoughts on The Lord of the Rings? They're good. They're good thoughts, right? Of course. My sister and I, we would always, when I was in the 3rd or 4th grade, we went through a spell where for an entire month, every day, we just watched the whole trilogy, like back to back, every single day for a whole month. I think we got to a point where we could recall Gollum's, just almost all of his lines, just verbatim. We love those movies. Though someone needs to tell me whether or not Amazon is actually remaking the Lord of the Rings, because I mentioned this also in the Game of Thrones podcast, but are they actually remaking Game of Thrones? I mean, fuck. Are they actually remaking the Lord of the Rings, or are they telling a prequel story? Because I don't know if it's just me, but I really don't care about prequel stories. Like, if you already did the big thing, you know, like if you already did the Lord of the Rings, I don't really care about the other thing, or what came before that, because we already did the big thing, and you know, whatever has gone on in the past is pretty inconsequential. That's what I feel about the upcoming Game of Thrones spin-off prequels. We just had the Game of Thrones. I don't really care what's gonna happen or what happened in the past. So I guess if anyone knows what exactly Amazon's doing, let me know if they actually are going to remake the Lord of the Rings. But anyway, yeah. I love the Lord of the Rings. Always have. It's one of the best trilogies ever. Next question. What are your thoughts on projects like the space race? I don't know what, like... I like it. I like the space. I like the moon landing space. I don't... There are certain things that I don't... I might end up, depending on how many questions we get in the future, I might get a little bit more picky. Because I'm not really a fan of, like, you know, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? What do you think about this? That can kind of get... I don't know that I need to have... I don't know that I need to have opinions on everything. Like, I will probably never make a video on foreign politics. Like, I just don't... For one, I don't think people care what I have to say, and two, I don't think people should really care about what I have to say about foreign policy all that much. Or, you know, I don't really think I'm gonna make a video on, like, the political intricacies of Iran. That, you know, that's just not... You know, I guess I'm fine with the space race, you know. I don't know what that question really means. A little bit of inspiration in the people, you know. This is the Cold War we're talking about, so it served its purpose, I guess, the space race. Next question. With the world as holistically messed up as it is and heading in such a dark direction ecologically, extremes of social and political polarization, rising rates of depression and suicide, rampant abuse of drugs, alcohol, pharmaceuticals, and the inevitable abuses of gene editing, VR, and AI, to name a few facets of the problems our species faces. In the absence of any capable presidents, popes, prime ministers, etc., what do you see? Do you see any thought leaders, perhaps spiritual or philosophical, in the world who offer any kind of legitimate big picture leadership, vision, strategies for mankind? Someone like Jordan Peterson might be in this territory for many people, at least on one level. Anyone standing out for you? If not, what do you think of such a predicament? You said in the absence of any capable presidents, popes, and prime ministers. I don't know if you're asking who who should be in that position. Basically for me, most of our problems are not going to be solved on a federal. Our problems are not going to be solved through passing legislation. That's not legislation has an impact, but culture has a much bigger impact on everything, in my opinion, than who is in power. Power is not what I consider to be one of the most important things you need to have a grasp on. Like, the federal government should not be something that people spend their time focusing on. It should be your local towns, state governments at the most, really. So if you're asking who should be in that type of position, or what one person should be leading, I don't subscribe to that kind of idea of the one person. Maybe, if we can just get Calvin Coolidge's who just do nothing, because then I won't have to think about it. But because Calvin Coolidge is the best president in the United States. But if we're talking, culturally, even there are certain thought leaders, I guess. I can name you some people I like. I like most of the people who write at National Review. I like, obviously, Thomas Sowell. I like David French. I like Jonah Goldberg. I like Charles Cook. I like, but that's not. I don't mean that in terms of put them in positions of power. They probably do fine if they were, but that's not our. If this is a, you're mentioning with the world being heading in a dark direction. Well, I sort of disagree with some of that, but I don't. Our problems are not a matter of just what policy gets passed in the Congress. That's not where I see our problems being fixed. It is a people thing. It is a cultural thing. So I don't. There's too much to unpack in this question. I touch on various facets of these things in videos that might work for you, but there's a lot going on in that question. I don't have the time at the moment to really dig deep in that. Next question. What kind of people did you hang out with in high school, and what were some personal significant events that took place in your high school that shaped your interests or character? So I went to high school in Northern Virginia, and middle school and high school. I came to Virginia in the middle of the 5th grade. But where I lived, it was it's pretty ghetto. One of the things that shocked me the most, because I lived in Italy before I came to Virginia, and I went to, all the kids that you're with are of a military family. So I'm going to school with fairly disciplined students. These are disciplined people, kids. For kids, they were fairly well disciplined that I went to school with. And it was such a shock when I came to Virginia in the middle of the 5th grade, and I started school again. And I moved to Virginia in November, but I don't think I started school again until somewhere in January for the 5th grade. And like none of the kids listened to their teachers. There was a fairly ghetto attitude people had, but like the amount of disrespect that teachers got, like the teacher says, you know, hey everyone, sit down, just sit down. No one sits down, and I'm thinking back when I was in a music classroom for one of the first times in the 5th grade in Virginia. We went to a music class, and the teacher everyone's like banging on instruments and stuff, and the teacher says sit down, and I go over to sit down because the teacher said to sit down, and everyone else is just like, they just continue to bang on instruments. they don't listen to the teacher, and they're just giving her a bunch of shit. And I'm like, what the hell is happening? And this has been the theme ever since then. All of middle school. Dear God, there's so much ghetto-ness going on. Students just don't care about listening to their teachers. They just don't care about that. It was just incredible. And then on through high school. So most of my friends, most of my friends, I would say, had some sort of ghetto streak in them. Like that's probably about half of them, and then the other half were a bit more decent. And that's kind of the people who I hung out with. Most of them all seemed to take, or at a certain point, most of my friends were, you can find them in an AP class in high school. My senior year, like my entire schedule was just AP classes, because you just get better students in that class. You get better people to hang out with or to talk to in general. You just don't get a lot of the insane ghetto-ness. I mean, it's incredible from going from AP classes to taking one class that's not an AP. The quality of student in a non-AP class, I mean, it's just really bad students academically, and then on the level of just personality and attitude and character. But I would say that that's very different. The ghetto culture is very different from the type of dirtbag you get here on the West Coast, and especially at the University of Oregon. It's a very different culture. I wouldn't really say that I hung out with, like, I guess it's like all across the spectrum, really. I mean, I hung out with people who were very terrible academically. I hung out with people who were very smart. Hung out with people who were unbelievably ghetto and who were unbelievably, upright. I guess I was all across the spectrum, I guess, with the people I would hang out with. But most of that was, I guess we can say, I made more of an effort to know people in high school, just because I was going to be 4 years trapped in the same building. I have not bothered to make that same amount of effort for college. But it's also kind of because I just don't care anymore. I might return to this topic. I might return to this topic later, but running out of time right now, I kind of want to zip through some of these questions. I'm not going to answer this question on immigration. Very impressed with your choice of music. Wondering if you would talk more about music in your future podcasts, like what you did on your freshman video. I don't know. I don't really know that I might. I think I got a lot of that taken care of in the college video. I just love music. I intend on playing music in the background of this podcast. But most of the music that I do, I'll say for modern music, generally, as soon as someone starts singing, like if I hear an instrumental that I like, hey, these are some good, instruments going, it sounds kind of good, and then the person starts singing, and then it's like, oh. So, I mean, right now, I've just been listening to Vaporwave and Chillwave mostly, and Yacht Rock for the last couple months. But when I first discovered George Clanton, I just love his instrumentals. But then he starts singing. It's really bad. But his instrumentals are so damn good that I've just kind of said screw it, and I've gotten used to his voice, but I just don't like a lot of singing in most modern songs. So if you can just send me great instrumentals, I'm all about that. I'm all about that. Next question. I know this is an unpopular question, but do you think having a draft would give many males our age some meaning, even if they hate it, and it is not as cost effective compared to how the military budget is set up? Or would having self-improvement through militias be a better way of giving people a disciplined lifestyle? I'm not a fascist. There was a time where I thought that, something like what Israel has, where, mandatory service. There was a time where I thought that would be useful, but now I don't think that is. I just don't. I don't think it is. As much as I think it might take care of some problems, I don't think that's a very useful means of going about this. We just need better families, better disciplined parents who discipline their children, basically, and get them parents who discipline their children, and we just need a lot more outlets for people to be able to have good values inculcated in them. I will talk. I promise I will talk more about this very, very soon. Next question. Hey, Juice Boy, it's me again. Are there any personal philosophies you follow that can be anything from a religion to organizations or just some general wisdom you've picked up over the years? If you do, then could you explain why? Would you recommend others follow the same philosophies you do? I mean, you kind of get the gist of what I think from the videos, I would think. Basically, I don't really talk about religion on this channel too much. I mean, I always kind of hint at it because for one, I just need to do more reading on that topic myself. But on the other hand, it doesn't seem to be a very good way to persuade people these days. So I try to keep it out, but I don't disregard the importance of religion, or specifically Judeo-Christian religion and values for a moral guidance. This is one of those kinds of questions that it gets extrapolated on in the videos, and the next one I'm making, the next video I'm making is I think it's really one of the more important ones that I'm going to make. And I think it'll cover some of the stuff that you guys are asking questions on. Honestly, I'm looking forward to getting this video out. It takes forever. I haven't been able to work on it lately because just schoolwork, but I think you'll enjoy the next video. It will cover some of these things you were all hinting at. Okay, final question. Do you have any favorite YouTube channels, specifically any non-politically oriented? Yeah. I don't get any political. I don't watch any political YouTube channels. I don't. Everyone likes to watch Tim Cook, or no, not Tim Pool. Sorry. I don't. I just don't have I don't have the time to watch that kind of stuff. And I have such little time to really spend watching YouTube videos that I've really had to narrow down my interest to just one channel per subject that I'm interested in. So I really love Accursed Farms for just video game related stuff. Just that one channel, he does a bunch of great stuff on that channel. And I like memes, so I only subscribe to like one dank meme compilation channel. That's all I do, and I have just the one outlet for that. Right now, since I've gotten back into just because Game of Thrones came back, I've been following a little bit more of Preston Jacobs and watching some ideas of Ice and Fire stuff, just because it's interesting. It passes the time, and it's fun to watch. That's Emp Lemon for I don't really know why. He kind of does he does whatever he wants, but he's that avenue, I guess. That's Red Letter Media for movies. That's really it. I just don't have a lot of time to spend on YouTube. I'm just reading books all the time now, or doing something with the videos, or doing something related to school. That's kind of how I have to spend my time right now, just very limited. But okay, that's the final question, and that'll do it for episode 2 of the Juice Box. We've got a good hour of juice today. Again, I hope you all enjoyed this. I hope this was less rambly than the last one. I feel like I talked a bit more in this one. Hoping this gets better as we go along. I do have a script in front of me of bullet points of things to talk about, but it doesn't always end up going that way depending on just how the conversation goes. But at least for me, I've noticed that I feel it feels like I'm talking faster and more in this episode. But so that'll do it for this one. Again, be sure to listen on iTunes and Spotify if you aren't already, or if you just found out about it. Nothing but 5-star reviews. Video, I'm working on the video. It is a very hefty one. I really hope everyone likes it when it comes out. This might, aside from stuff relating to economics, this is probably one of the more important videos I'm ever going to make. And it, at the very latest, mid July, it might come out, or late July, depends. I'm just slaving away. But yeah, that's it. Thanks again for everyone for watching and for listening and for supporting the channel and for donating on Patreon. And I forgot to say this last time, I think, but thanks for everyone sending in PayPal donations. There was a lot of those. I really, really appreciate that. I appreciate what I have here. And I'll get back to slaving away at this Japanese homework, and then I'll see how much more I can get done on this video. How's that sound? This has been the Juice Box, and thanks for listening.